about what is data communication, then what is networking, what are the different components of networking, what are the requirements of networking. So I've discussed all those things. And finally, I have ended my class with a little bit about discussing about OSI, which is also called OSI Layer or OSI model. So today I will discuss about this OSI Layer in detail. So just a brief idea about data communication, the problems. So suppose there are two different devices. They may be computer, they may be laptop or any other device, some intermediate connecting devices. So if there are two different devices with different hardware and software. So suppose this one having hardware 1 and software 1, this one having hardware 2 means a different one, not same as this device. So, and this is A, this is B. And what I want to do, what is the goal of data communication or networking? I am connecting these two devices, either through a wire connection or through some wireless connection. So ultimately, I will connect these two devices. So if there are changes, so for example, suppose this computer having Windows operating system, okay, this is a 32-bit computer, okay, and this one suppose a Unix operating system, and this one a say 64-bit computer, this one having say RAM, hardware motherboard of Intel, this one may the motherboard of say other company like say Asus. So there are difference in hardware and software, and still I want to connect these two devices means the information that I am sharing between these two devices, they must be understandable. The information that I am sharing between these two devices, that must be understandable by both. But since there is a huge difference in software and hardware, it means the instruction set, since my machine language is dependent on the hardware, so it means the instruction set that I am sharing between these two devices will be different. So if there is a huge difference in hardware and software, then there comes some problems to share the information. To solve this problem, there is one, you can say there is one communication, intermediate communication software, which is just trying to give some help, which is also called open system interconnection or intercommunication, whatever you say, interconnection or intercommunication. This open system intercommunication or interconnection will provide us the platform which will make it possible to convert, you can say convert the information from one device to another device. It means Without, now what do you mean by open system interconnection? It means without changing the hardware or software, without changing. So can briefly say without changing the hardware or and software, without changing the hardware and software, the connection between two devices is possible due to open system interconnection or communication. Okay, so this open system interconnection or communication is also called OSI, open system interconnection. So it is providing us one platform to share information between two devices. Now, this open system, now just try to understand, suppose I want to send some information from A to B. So what is the first form of my information? My information first form will be uh, a known character set. Known character set means either English or any other language. Suppose my information is ABC. I want to send this information ABC from this device A to device B. Okay, and just try to understand what I have to do when I want to send the data from one device to another device. So my data is in English form. Suppose I am writing some email. Okay, so I am writing the email in one interface. So this is my interface where I am writing the email. I'm writing the email, and there is one button which is called send button. There is some bar where I have to give the address. So this is the address bar, and this is the button which will send the data, this mail to this particular address. Okay, so this is the through which I am sending my information. That is one kind of user interface. Okay, so I am just, it may be have some graphical interface, then I will call it graphical user interface, GUI. Okay, through this GUI, what I am doing, I am able to send my data to another device. Suppose my data is this one. Now see, since I am sending my data through some computer devices, and we already know that computer devices only can understand binary values. They cannot understand this ASCII values, ABC. So what I have to do, the first thing that I have to do, I have to convert this into some binary form. Suppose the binary form, the converted binary form is this one. For this particular data, suppose the binary form is this one. So this is called translation. So I am translating, sorry. So this is called translation. I am translating my English language to some machine level language. Now, see, after this translation, I can transmit this data to the receiver. But what is the problem if I send this data? Suppose this data, this ABC is my login password. This is my password. So if I send this data to through a cable or through wireless media. So this is, suppose this is wireless media and this is through a cable. So if I send this data through a wireless WAN cable or wireless media, anybody can able to track the data. Anybody. If it is wireless, if he is able to catch the perfect frequency of my data, or if it is through WAN, if he is able to intrude through some device, he can easily catch this data. So what I will do, so the logic is I will send the data, I have to send, but I will send the data in some encrypted form. Why I am using some encrypted form or hiding, or why I am hiding the information? Because since this is my own data and I need some security, I need some privacy for this data. That's why I have to convert it into some encrypted form, and suppose the encrypted data looks like this. Okay, logic clear? So my original data, this one is now converted to some encrypted form. Now suppose any intruder able to catch this data, because I am sending this data through this wireless channel or WAT channel. So when he will capture this data, he will not able to understand what is written. Suppose I am trying to send ABC, but by some encryption technique, I have converted into XMZ. Now, if the intruder receive this one from this, he will not be able to crack my password. Okay. Now this technique is called this is encryption. Okay. So I will try to encrypt my data. I will try to hide my data. Okay. Now, in some cases, suppose I am sending one huge image. Now, in case of image is called, in case of image is actually formed by some pixels. So, suppose this is 1 pixel, this is 1 pixel. Now, if it is a color image for a particular pixel having 3 different values, one is its red value, then green value, then blue value. For each pixel, I will have 3 different values. Okay. Now, the value of this RGB will be range from 0 to 255. So, if it is 0 to 255, then we require 2 to the power 8 number of bits to transmit one single bit, and there are 3 different information. This is for only for red part. Similarly, there is a green part, there is a blue part. So I need to represent one particular pixel. I required 3 into 2 to the power 8 number of bits. Is it clear? Now suppose this image is having a row and column of R into C. So you can understand what is the total size in bits. Total size in bits of this image information. So whenever we want to send a huge data, then it is obvious that if I am sending a huge data, it will require a huge bandwidth. Now, what is bandwidth? In normal practical way, you can understand bandwidth is like this. Suppose this is one pipe through which I will send some water. This one pipe through which I will send some water. This is the length of the pipe. This is the length of the pipe, and this is the area of cross section. This is area of cross section. Then the volume of this pipe V is A into L, and this will represent the bandwidth. This will represent the bandwidth, means the total capacity of the link. But bandwidth having a different definition with respect to frequency. The bandwidth means in frequency respect, the definition of bandwidth means the difference between highest and lowest frequency. FH, if FH is the highest frequency and FL is the lowest frequency, then the difference between these two will give you the bandwidth, and the unit of bandwidth is normally in hertz. But for our better understanding, what we will do, we will convert this hertz into some bits per second. Okay, so this is nothing but the capacity. So capacity is actually this resemble the bandwidth. Okay, clear? So if I will send this huge amount of data through a channel, then you can understand how much bandwidth. So bandwidth also can be represented in terms of bits per second. Means if in 1 second I will transmit this amount of data, then how much time it will require? So how much time it will require? So 3 into 2 to the power 8 into R into C divided by A into L, because this A into L is the total capacity in 1 second bandwidth. So this is the time required. This is the time required to transmit this huge picture. Okay, logic clear? Now, when we will try to send this huge picture or huge image in through our network, then it will capture the bandwidth, and as well as it will require huge amount of time to transmit the data. So that's why it is required that whenever we are sending a huge data, it must be compressed. So it must be compressed. So there is one interesting step, intermediate this two, this encryption, the step is called compression. Why we need compression? Because to minimize the time required, or to minimize the bandwidth utilization of, we require some compression. So compression means it will compress the data, and we use normally in case of image we use JPEG or bitmap. So those are different compression techniques. Compression techniques may be in two types. One is called lossy compression, another is lossless compression. So generally we use lossless compression, where after decompression we will able to generate the actual image. Okay, that's why you will see when you will okay, let's come to this point later. So these are the three important tasks whenever I am sending some information to another device. So the step number one is I have to perform some translation. Okay, then I will perform some compression, and finally I will perform some encryption. Now remember, this compression will come first and then the encryption. Now you can ask why. The reason is, see, if I perform the encryption first then compression, then what will happen? I have to see, in case of compression encryption, I have to convert the bits into some other forms. So if my data is already compressed, it means the size of the data is already minimized, then it will be easier to apply the encryption technique. But if I use first encryption, then compression, then it becomes difficult. That's why we use first compression, then the encryption. Okay. Now, after all this thing, my data, so suppose after compression, it becomes 1101, and after encryption, suppose it becomes 1010. So this is my final data. So my actual data is this one, and my final transmitted data is this one. Okay, so now my data, which is written as ABC, now it becomes 1010, and now I can transmit this data to through the channel. Okay, but before sending the data, I have to do few more things. Okay, now it means now my data, which is actually ABC, which is not this data cannot be transmitted through the network because I have to convert it into binary. So now I got 1010, which is in binary form, okay, which is having some security, already encrypted, and I have also minimized the utilization of bandwidth. So I have applied some compression technique. So it means now this data is in some, now this data is in some presentable form. Presentable form. Now I can present this data. I can send this data. I can send this data to the network. So it means my data is now presentable form. In this form, my data is not in presentable form. Now my data is in presentable form. And the software which is performing this job is called presentation layer. is called presentation layer. So presentation, you can easily understand that this translation, then compression, then encryption, those are all nothing but some set of instructions, some programs, some softwares. So that's why I'm saying the software or the layer is converting our data into some presentable form is called presentation layer. So this is one layer which is very important. Okay. Now, before that, I have already told you that whenever I am sending some mail, I am able to use some graphical user interface through which I am able to send the data. Remember, this is the only layer which I am able to see, which I am able to use. So this layer is some user interface, having some user interface, and remember the layer which provide us the software which provide us this graphical user interface is called application layer. Okay, so this is the only layer which we are able to see, which we are able to use, and this is nothing but some user interface, and this will be provided by application layer. So the first layer, the first set of softwares or instruction which will give us the user interface is called application. Okay, then I am able to insert the data through this application layer, and then what I am doing, I am just transmitting by clicking the send button. Whenever I am pressing the send button, my data, which is ABC, now it is first translated, then compressed, and then encrypted. And the layer or set of software or set of instruction which is performing those things and making our data in some presentable form is called presentation layer. Okay. So these are the two layers. The first layer providing us the user interface. The second layer converting my data into some presentable form by performing translation, then compression, and then encryption. Okay. Now remember, these are all from the sender side, and obviously in the receiver end, what you have to do? First, you have to decrypt, because I have encrypted my data. So in receiver end, first you have to decrypt, then you have to perform the decompression, then you have to perform the retranslation to make it again into some high level English language. Okay, so remember in destination or in receiver end, whole performance or whole application will be in reverse order. This one is top down, this one is top down. Your data, which is this one, so this is your data. This data will travel through all these layers, all this set of instructions sequentially. And in the receiver end, it will be in a form of bottom up. All this data will go through from layer by layer sequentially from bottom to top. In sender side from top to bottom, and in receiver end from bottom to top. Okay. Now see, after this, all this application and presentation layer, now my data is in presentable form. Now come to another interesting difficulty in case of data sending. Suppose this is the bandwidth of my channel. This is the bandwidth of my channel. Okay, and I'm able to send. Suppose this the bandwidth is 5. Okay, the bandwidth is 5. So it means bandwidth, sometimes this bandwidth or sometimes it is called maximum transfer unit. Now, what do you mean by this? Suppose I have a bag. Uh, uh, Using this bag, I am able to carry, say 5 kg rice at a time. I am able to carry 5 kg rice at a time. Okay. Now, if I want to bring, say 7 kg rice, then what I have to do? First, I have to carry 5 kg, and then I have to carry 2 kg. So how many times I am carrying this bag? I am carrying this bag first, then second. So I will carry this bag 2 times. Okay, logic clear? The same concept is applied in case of our data communication. Suppose the maximum transfer unit, it means the capacity of the link is in such a way that it is able to transmit at a time maximum some amount of data. So what you will do, suppose this is your data, say the data is 12, I'm not giving unit, it may be MB or anything, and the maximum transfer unit is say 5. Maximum transfer unit is 5. So what you will do, you will break the data into 3 parts, 1 5, okay, then another 5, and then the rest 2. So your data, which is actually this one, is now broken into pieces. Piece number 1, piece number 2, and piece number 3. 5 5. Why I am breaking the data into pieces? Because my maximum transfer unit, the maximum capacity of my link is 5. It is not able to transmit more than this. That's why I will transmit or I will receive the data in packets. So that's why these are called different packets. And you can, you already see that our internet is one kind of packet, kind of data communication, where our data is coming in packets. Sometimes the speed of the internet is heavy, and then sometimes it is 0. Then again means if you see your internet speed, it is like that. At one moment it is like this, 5 MB. Then suddenly it is 0, 0. Then in the next time interval it is 10. Then again it may be 2. So it is always coming in packets. Okay. That's why it is not a continuous flow of data. It is always discrete. And why it is discrete? Because it is coming in packets. But remember, suppose this is the server through which I am connected. Suppose this is the server through which I am connected, and this is my client device. I am connected through this. Now the data is transferring through this channel. Okay. Now see, sometimes data becomes 0, na? So sometimes data transmission is 0. Then what do you mean by data transmission 0? It means the connection is lost. No, the connection is not lost. Throughout the connection, throughout this data transmission, this data packet transmission, there is one connection which is fixed, which is first established through this client and server. If you remember that whenever you are connecting your Wi-Fi, you first have to give the username, password, your Wi-Fi is connected, and then you are receiving your data. But your data, sometimes your data is your YouTube are giving you buffering. It means at that time no data is coming. Still, your connection with the server is still there. Okay, so this is maintained by some software or some set of instruction, and that's this. All these things, whatever I have discussed in this part, are done by another layer which is called session layer, which is a set of instruction which will perform some operation. What are those operations? Operation number 1, this session layer, operation number 1 is it will break the data, break the data into smaller units. Why I am breaking the data into smaller units? Yes, MTU is one reason. Another reason is smaller units or smaller things are easy to carry. That's why it is breaking the data into smaller units. Then after breaking, see, suppose what we actually what happened after breaking this. Let us see one example. Suppose this is the source, okay, or sender. Okay, this is the receiver. Okay. Now, the sender and receiver are connected through different devices. Suppose this is one device, this is another device, and they are connected like this through this channel or through this channel, or they may have some dedicated point-to-point connection. Okay. Now, see, there are three possible connection between the sender and receiver. Okay. Now, I have already broken the data into three parts. This is part number 1, this is part number 2, and this is part number 3. Okay. Now, suppose when sender try to send the data to the receiver, he see that this channel is free. So it will send the data packet number 1 through this channel. And whenever it sends the data through this channel, it will consider that this channel, this communication is now busy. So it will send the second data, suppose through this channel, okay, through this channel. And since this one is busy, so it will send the third packet through this channel. So it is using three different pathways to send the data to this particular receiver. Okay. Now it may happen that somehow one is received by R, and then somehow this 2 is getting some delay, some late. Why? Because it is passing through some intermediate device. Due to this intermediate device, there may be some delay for this packet 2. So what happened? You received 1, receiver received 1, then he received 3, and then he received 2. It means data may be in out of order. And I hope you have already seen this type of problem. Whenever you are sending a huge message through your SMS, you are sending a huge message through your SMS, then it will be broken into 2 pieces. Okay? Why broken into 2 pieces? Because there is some maximum transfer unit. And sometimes it happens that between these 2 pieces, the second piece, between these 2 pieces, piece number 1 and piece number 2, sometimes the second piece reaches first and then the piece number 1. It happens. Why this happens? Due to this example, due to this different pathways. Okay. And then what you have to do in the receiver end, you have to make them in sequence. It must be 1, then 2, then 3. So you have to make it in sequence. How you will be able to make them sequence? So this is maintained by this session layer. Whenever it is breaking the data into smaller units, it will give some checkpoints. It will give some checkpoints, and it will give some checkpoints and numbers, so that in the receiver end, the out of order data can be again made in sequence. Okay, logic clear? And the last, another important thing done by this session layer is this one. I have already told you that although my link is not receiving any data from the server, but the link between server and client is still okay. Okay, and this is called session dialog control. Session dialog control, or you can say session dialog controller. These are the 3 important tasks performed by session layer. So first the application layer, then your data will pass through presentation layer so that it will be in some presentable form. Then it will pass through session layer. And what are the tasks session layer is performing? Session layer was breaking the data into smaller units according to the maximum transfer unit. Then it will give some checkpoints or some numbers so that it can be again rearranged in the receiver end. And finally, if there is no communication, no data transfer is happening, still that time the connection between sender and receiver is control. This is called session dialog controller. So all these 3 things is done by this session layer. So this session layer is very important to do these things. Okay. Now after this, what is coming? Whenever you are sending some data, whenever you are, suppose you are sending some mail, whether it is email or any other type of mail, then you must have to mention the addresses. And remember, in this data communication, whether data communication or means electronic mail or in normal mail, there must be 3 different things you have to mention in the address part. One is called the PIN number. Second one, you have to mention the house number, correct? And the number 3, to whom you are sending the data. That is, suppose Mr. something. So you must have to mention these 3 things whenever you are sending some normal mail. So when you are sending some email, then what you have to mention? You have to mention the network address, in which network you are sending. Then you have to mention the device address or machine address. Okay, and the last thing that you have to mention, the particular software that is running to whom you are sending the data. So that is called the port address. So you have to mention network address, machine address, and port address. These 3 different address having 3 different formats. So you have to mention. So you need 3 different layers. You need 3 different layers to solve this problem, to solve this criteria. Okay, so these are the 3 different addresses. So far we have seen 3 different layers. One is application, then presentation, then session, then comes another 3 layers. These are these 3 layers, and after that another interesting layer also required, and we will discuss about that after a small break, because only 1 minute is left. So we will meet again after 5 minutes and we will discuss about this 3 layers and the last layer of OSI model. Okay, any query up to this? You can unmute yourself and can ask.
হ্যালো স্যার। হ্যাঁ স্যার, বলছি তো এমনি আমরা যখন জিমেলে পাঠাই তখন তো এই মানে এই 3টে লেয়ার তো দেখা না, শুধু অ্যাড্রেসই দেওয়া হয়।
আমরা খালি বললাম যে আমরা খালি অ্যাপ্লিকেশন লেয়ারই দেখতে পাই, আর কিছু দেখতে পাবো না, বাকি সবগুলো তারপরে অটোমেটিক হয়। ঠিক আছে, we are only able to see the application layer.
ওকে।